Hey guys, Frightener22 here, welcoming you back to another installment of Frightener22's Saturday Night Movie Drive-In. Well, considering your old friend Frightener22 has a set of standards, he decided not to go down to the Jersey Shore and fist pump his ass off with the cast of the Jersey Shore. So, taking into consideration that this is the spring break season for most college campuses across the country, I figured that I would give you guys a full-fledged review of one of my favorite 1980s sex comedies. So we're going to be taking a look at 1983's Spring Break. Now, this film was directed by Sean S. Cunningham, who a lot of people would actually recall his name for being one of the creative forces behind the original Last House on the Left film, as well as giving birth to the 1980 slasher classic Friday the 13th. Now, in 1983, just 3 short years after giving Friday the 13th to the world, he kind of switched shifts and did a genre of filmmaking that was, pretty powerful and really just all over the place in the 1980s, and that was, of course, the sex comedy. Now, in this film, I wouldn't exactly call it a straight-on sex comedy, because in sex comedies, that's mainly the two driving force that you have going on. It's just a lot of nudity and, tons of comedy. And while, Spring Break certainly has both of those, I think there's a little bit more of, a little bit more of a coherent story and better acting in Spring Break as opposed to the other sex comedies. Not that there's really anything wrong with that. I just think that Spring Break kind of did it on a pinch better of a scale than most sex comedies did at the time. So the story of Spring Break deals with this. It's, of course, the early 1980s, and it takes place in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where it's clearly a big happening time for college students on their spring break. And we open up on our two characters, Nelson and Adam, who are pretty big geeks, but they're, just trying to live up their spring break as much as the next guy. So upon checking into their new hotel for the week, they kind of notice that somebody else may have vacated the room. So, the guy that leads them up there is cleaning up after them, and a little bit of, hilarity ensues. So, of course, Nelson and Adam get on their trunks and go down to the pool. And it isn't until a few moments later that these two guys from New York actually come up checking in to the same hotel, and they get put into the same room. These are our characters, Stu and OT. These guys are really cool. I mean, they're, these muscular kind of, buffoon types at first. So once they're, put into the same room as Nelson and Adam, my first time viewing it, I actually kind of thought I had it figured out. From the first glance, I figured, oh, okay, Nelson and Adam are going to be the geeks, and Stu and OT are going to be, the big jock-type looking guys that are going to pick on them because they kind of took their room away from them. But interestingly enough, I was cleverly surprised by that, where as much as both, these two, the four characters, Nelson, Adam, and Stu and OT, are very different on the surface, they don't, kick their ass or anything like that. They actually take a liking to Nelson and Adam, and all four of them actually agree to share the room for the week, since they're both going to be vacating in the same vacation spot. So that was kind of cool to see, kind of two cooler, more popular-looking characters taking some geekier characters under their wing and being cool with them. So that was a nice, pleasant surprise right from the gate about this movie. And of course, moving on, while Nelson and Adam are, of course, trying to, enjoy their spring break, we learn that Nelson's stepfather is actually a man who's running for a pretty important political position. So once he finds out that his stepson is actually vacationing and more or less making a fool out of himself in Fort Lauderdale, him and his Nelson's mother actually decide to take their boat all the way to Fort Lauderdale to actually retrieve him, in hopes to not make him look like an asshole in his upcoming political, endeavor. Furthermore, there's another subplot going on where this asshole who's trying to take over the hotel that all these partying college kids are staying at, he's trying to take over them thanks to a bribe from Nelson's father. So he's trying to steal the hotel from the owner of the actual hotel. So it's going to kick all the kids out and kind of ruin their time. So throughout the whole thing, the whole main vibe that's going on here is that Nelson needs to continue to dodge his stepfather and mother in order to continue having a partying, awesome time down in Fort Lauderdale. And then, of course, all the kids come together at the end to do their best to try and save the hotel from the cool owner who actually runs it. So there's a lot of things going on in this film, but like I said, it's a really, really fun time. But I did also mention that it's slightly different and a notch above most 80s sex comedies because I think the story is a little bit more well told, and I think it's a lot of fun. But absolutely, don't get me wrong. I mean, look at that box art. And I know that upon going into this movie, you're probably expecting a lot of nudity, a lot of skin, and everything, and you totally get that. You get tons of chicks in bikinis, doing wet t-shirt contests, going topless. There's tons of sex scenes, all that good stuff that you would expect from an '80s sex comedy. But the story in this is really cool, and I think a lot of that is due in credit to Nelson and Adam with their relationship with Stu and OT, because I just think that's really cool. I don't think it was as common to see the more muscular, good-looking, popular jocks kind of taking the geeks under their wing. So that's something really cool that kind of separates it from the bunch of other '80s sex comedies. The other thing that really, really brought this movie home for me was the humor that kind of got brought up by Stu and OT, specifically OT. I mean, he's just, he can be a real buffoon at times, but it really adds to his character. But he's got a heart of gold in this, so it's really, really funny. I mean, for instance, the first scene that you see him, his first speaking line, he gets out of the car with Stu, and as they're walking through, he just sees some random guy, another partying student, leaned up against a wall drinking a beer, and he asks the guy if he can have his brew. So he just chugs the thing, and he just goes, "Dude, beer? It's fucking amazing." That's it. That was his first line. So right off the bat, I was in stitches laughing at that guy. And that's pretty much the kind of humor that you get from OT and Stu the entire time, which, really explains why this movie is so funny. It's really all due to those two guys. And of course, there's just a lot of cool things that, films of this stature did it really well, during their heyday. So, nowadays when you see films that are kind of injecting the same kind of partying lifestyle for kids, it just seems so forced and phony in films of the 2000s. I mean, films like Spring Break and other '80s sex comedies just really had it right. I mean, when they're filming it, it doesn't really seem like it's phony or like this is just bad news, all these kids, drinking and, all this, crazy, hijinks going on in the movie. It just seems like they're having a legitimately good time. I mean, you see belly flop contests, as I mentioned earlier, you see wet t-shirt contests, but there just seems to be a really fun atmosphere and, really great camaraderie, amongst all the students. There's not really a big separation of everybody looking really pretty, in every single shot, like newer films of the 2000s. But, like I said, there's tons and tons of good-looking, people in this film. And I mean, rightfully so. It's Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But the point that I'm trying to make is that film, '80s sex comedies did it the best. I mean, they just showed, that, really hard partying, lifestyle, and actually made it seem like it wasn't as bad as people make it out to be, today. And I mean, it just seems like they're having a really, really great time. I mean, the best thing that you can actually say about a film like this is that you walk away from it, just having a sense of fun in you. I mean, you just feel like you had a good time watching it, like you just left a really, really fun party. I mean, you walk out of other movies, with different, feelings in you, and you appreciate the cinematography, or you appreciate the special effects, or, the Oscar award-winning, acting in them. But films like Spring Break, you just walk away, with a smile on your face, kind of laughing about it, because that's all it was. It was just a good time, and it just reminded you of, the good weather and just fun times, during Spring Break. And what more could you ask for from a movie called Spring Break? Now, of course, moving on, one final thing that I would like to note is the director of this, Sean S. Cunningham. A lot of people really associate Sean S. Cunningham with, of course, his 1980 classic Friday the 13th. But in his small body of work, he managed to give actually a lot of, really great films that went under the radar. And 1983 Spring Break is certainly one of them. Like I say, this is actually one of the best '80s sex comedies of the 1980s. And of course, if you fast forward to 1985, he gave us The New Kids, starring Lori Loughlin, Eric Stoltz, and James Spader, which is absolutely one of the most underrated and, really great thrillers of the '80s. So like I said, in this small body of work, Sean S. Cunningham absolutely gave us a little bit more than just Friday the 13th. And if you guys are really, really thirsting for something incredibly fun and enjoyable this spring break season, look no further than 1983's Spring Break. I know you guys won't be disappointed. And for what it's worth, Mr. Skin, this is actually one of his favorite films of all time. All right, guys, thanks again for tuning in to Frightener 22's Saturday Night Movie Drive-In, and I'll catch you guys next time.